Okay, welcome to my first little YouTube video. I've been asked to do a bit of a rundown of this War Pig Rangemaster clone that I've built. I'm selling on eBay. If you go onto BCV Guitar Effects on eBay, there's plenty of links on this Instagram feed. Starts with Black Cat Vintage Guitar Effects. Named after my my little black cat that I had many moons ago. It's got a nice little story attached to it that I'll not be telling anyone on here. But here it is. It is a very close copy of the original Rangemaster circuit. I've kept it true to the original. I've stayed away from throwing loads of mods and filters and whatnot at it. It is a vintage effect. I've gone for a nice retro-y feel, nice cream sort of colour to the enclosure. You've got your chicken head on this particular one, but the knobs do vary a bit. If you have a look up and down on the various photographs, I'm tending to stick a photograph on now of each one that I complete, so that you can start and get a bit of a portfolio of the different looks that you can go for with these. Each one I'm happy to sort of tailor to the individual within reason, as far as things like knobs and selectors and things like that go. The main mods that I've added is a few alterations to make it compatible with a 9-volt standard power source, which mine's just going through a standard 9-volt power source. They are a little bit prone to being on the same power supply as other modern effects. We did have one, however, plugged in yesterday on the back end of an effects board, which had got like 16-17 pedals on it, and it was still fine. There was a little bit of increased background noise, but nothing horrendous. But for the best effect, really, that you want to be just running it off a battery. That again is how they were designed. The 9-volt is an addition. So the other main one is the input capacitor selector, which just gives you the ability to select between a high, low, and a mid tone. The central position is always the original setup, so that is as you would have got it out the box in 1967. You wouldn't have had this on there. It would have just been a fixed resistor inside, capacitor inside. But yeah, this is the one of the main sort of mods. And then the second, you can't really call it a mod, because originally the BIOS would have been there, but it would have been on the circuit board. The very early ones, I believe the BIOS were just done away with, and it was just a fixed resistor. I've added the BIOS largely because of the 9-volt supply. What I found in testing and developing it is that if you're always running it off a 9-volt battery, then you could just run it off a fixed resistor in the circuit and do away with the BIOSing. But when you plug it into a 9-volt supply, the voltages can vary only minutely, but it is enough to my ear to alter the sound that's coming out of the effect. So I started off with a BIOS, a little screwdriver BIOSer, which was on the circuit board, which is quite a common alteration to these. And then, sort of for my own convenience, sort of made the addition of the extra pot at the back, which just allows you to bias and bias the effect and get the tone right, dependent on your guitar, your amplifier, and your power supply. The BIOS effect on these, once you've found that sweet spot, this is not a volume control to be done, you know, whacked up and down. Once you've found that sweet spot, which bizarrely can be almost anywhere, it's generally sort of in this sort of region on these, but it can just be anywhere. The alteration is tiny. I'm trying to illustrate it there, but that's the kind of level of alteration that I'm talking about. It really is tiny. And it just dials a little bit of when you plug it into a 9-volt supply, inevitably, because it's an analog effect, you're just getting a bit of background noise, which just allows you to soften it a bit and make it a slightly cleaner sound. The circuit board itself is not on a tag strip. I did it on a Vero board for my again, for just the way I prefer to build it, because I wanted this transistor on a socket to minimise the amount of soldering that you do. These are obviously quite expensive individually, between sort of 10 and sort of £18 each, so you don't want to be burning these out too frequently, and the fact that they're quite a few years old, these date from sort of the 60s and early 70s, and before they just started binning them and moving over to silicon transistors. So they're susceptible to heat, so I got them on a socket, which means that all I do is just put a tiny blob of solder in just to fix it into position. As you can see there, that you've got a bit of a blob, even to the point that it's fixed in position, it's not bridged. I'm not going to mess about with it. It's because they are that sensitive. Then you've got the sort of the only non-vintage bit in the box really is these two capacitors, which are the power capacitors, filtering filtering and processing the power that's going into the unit. And I just found, simply by using vintage ones of these combined with a 9-volt supply, they were just, from a time point of view, it was too time consuming to have a bag of these and be plugging them in, unplugging them, plugging them in, unplugging them, to get ones that were stable enough to use in the circuit. They don't add anything to the sound, hence I've gone with modern electrolytic capacitors. But I think amply made up with these lovely old fear resistors, which are old high stability resistors, very old, very scarce, but I've managed to score a fair few. So at least the next 25-30 effects that I build will have these in. I think they do add something to the tone, but they're also very pretty. I think it looks like a little farm when you look at it on a level. That's just my brain. So yeah, there it is. It's a genuine, true vintage effect. It's a sensible clone of the original Rangemaster. I don't believe that I've altered it an awful lot from the original schematic. I'm offering these, they're on eBay at £100 each. For that you get quite a tailored service. I will liaise with you during the process to get the sound right with different transistors, different sort of capacitors on the inputs, to vary it between sort of, you know, these are all different. You could build 10 of these and they will all have a different sound. Excuse the dog in the background, he's just chosen this moment to squeeze his toy. So yeah, the unit you get will be tailored to your own preferences and what you're trying to achieve with your tone, whether it's a balls out sort of Sabbathy sort of crunch, or whether you want more of that slightly softer sort of mellower, more bluesy sort of Clapton-y sort of a feel. We can, through sound samples and whatnot, we can tailor it to suit. But they've been received very well so far, and we've made quite a few. I started doing them in mid-December, and the response has been such that we've decided to do them on a slightly larger scale, and have it as a little cottage industry. So if you follow one of the links below and go and have a look at them on eBay or Reverb, or indeed if you want to message me direct through Instagram, and I can answer any questions that anybody's got. Thank you. Bye.